Find out if the interpretation of these voices are truly tainted by the opinions and experiences of the research teams. The New Gravity media crew decided to conduct a study with 10 volunteers of varying ages and occupations.
Essentially what we did was we got a hold of 6 Class A EVP files, some of the best we could find, which were donated from 3 different investigation groups. And we played them for 10 volunteers, all of which who had no prior experience in paranormal investigation and who were not privy to any of the background information on the files. They didn't know where they were recorded or how they were recorded or who recorded them or what it was they were supposed to be listening to. To them, they were just audio files, period. And when they were done listening, we asked them what they think they might have heard, if anything at all.
It's Me, Grandpa was recorded in a cemetery during an investigation. It's just a good example of a young child's voice. The investigator wasn't trying for anything specific at the time. He was just at a grave and said, "Is anybody here? Anybody want to say anything?" And a little boy's voice said, "It's me, Grandpa."
I thought I could hear a child's voice, a little bit garbled, and I thought it was to the final point was, "Go ahead and talk."
All I know is that it sounded like a child could have been saying something. I don't know what. It was totally unidentifiable.
Move Your Head EVP was collected in a Presbyterian church in Trenton, New Jersey. The investigator just sat down in a pew and turned a recorder on to note that. She made notes when she moved, and a voice, very clear woman's voice, says, "Move your head," as though she'd sat in front of somebody in the pew.
It was a woman, it sounded like a woman's voice, but I couldn't make out what the woman was saying. Just couldn't.
2 sounded like it might have been an older woman saying, "Feel this hand."
Damn you.
The Damn You EVP was collected in a private house several years ago. It's just one that stands out as very loud and clear, and you know exactly what it is. When we play it at seminars, we don't introduce it at all. We just say, "Here's this voice," and obviously everybody knows what it is.
Damn you.
File 3, I clearly heard someone say, "Damn you." And it was almost too clear, and it didn't seem real. That's not to say that it's not, obviously, but it was just clear as a bell.
They were either saying "damn you" or "AMU," which I don't know, maybe Alabama Methodist, something.
When the study was over, the results fascinating. 2 of the files were agreed upon unanimously, and the other files, while most agreed there were voices present, had difficulty hearing what exactly was said.
Unless it's a really clear EVP where there's no doubt as to what's being said, it's open to interpretation a lot of times.
One of the interesting things we noticed with the study was that almost everybody agreed there were voices present. And almost everybody agreed on the gender of the voices, but when it came to determining what was being said, there were only 2 files that absolutely had no question. But I think it's important to note that it wasn't just the EVPs they couldn't understand. They even had trouble understanding some of the human voices that were present. And, you know, maybe there's something to all of this, but what we need to do is we need to pay closer attention. I think that the fact that there's voices there at all are undeniable and pretty impressive, but what's the cause? I think that's the real question.
Well, again, I think it's some sort of a thought energy, whether it's being specifically directed and formed somehow on the other side and produced physically here.
Photographic or audio, in spite of the vast quantity of evidence historically collected by researchers, the field of paranormal study has yet to produce a single piece of universally undisputable proof. Could it be such evidence doesn't exist, or is the problem in the hands of the researchers?
Again, being a skeptic, I've met a lot of mediums. I've gone to places like spiritualist churches and so forth, and I still have not come across one piece of evidence that has been at all convincing to me.
I think it's very difficult for paranormal researchers to capture true evidence because these things, you just can't turn them on like a light switch. There's no rhyme or reason as to what they're doing or when they're doing it, unless we're talking about a residual haunting. But for the most part, it's very difficult to be there at the right time and get these things to interact with us and capture the evidence.
Although a majority of the theories and principles purported by investigation groups have basic scientific position, they're still far from being tangible. And in spite of the hours of planning and preparation, evidence can still turn up where it's least expected. Just such a situation occurred during a joint investigation at the Colonial Inn in Yarmouthport, Massachusetts.
Well, my friend Rob Tremblay of CERT Investigations called us in and wanted to confer on this haunted inn. And because Sandra and I and Andrew deal essentially with inhuman spirits, I mean, we do all facets of paranormal investigation, but our specialty is inhuman spirits. He called us in to confer and investigate with him.
I saw her through here. Karen's been sensing her too.
What is
She's out to do her thing.
see?
I saw a woman out there taking care of flowers. It's just the same thing Karen explained.
Full apparition?
Pretty much, yeah.
It was on the stairs leading to the cupola?
Yeah.
We'll have to check that place out. Now, of course, an investigation of this magnitude takes at least several visits, and we were there once. And we did experience some minor activity. We did not obtain any EVPs, but there were some photographic anomalies, which we're still looking into at this time.
Among the various evidence collected during this investigation, one of the more unusual and somewhat controversial pieces was in fact captured by one of the New Gravity media crew members during a routine EVP session.
We were in a small dining room area conducting an EVP session. It was basically a question and answer session where we were asking, is there anybody who would like to communicate with us?
Is there anyone here that would like to communicate with us?
If you are here, would you appear on my hand? Essentially, while we're doing that, you may not get any results unless you're doing coupling, you're doing more than one form of communication at a time and data at a time too. You may be videotaping as well as recording, which was going on at the time. Sandra and I were essentially using magnetic tapes to try to get answers, and our results on audio proved inconclusive. We didn't really get any answers per se. But it was interesting, and it takes a lot of patience because you're sitting down answering questions, which is different than a seance. We are not the vehicles that it's communicating through. Magnetic tape is.
During the EVP session, something unusual began to occur. One of the New Gravity media camera crew noticed a peculiar light anomaly around Sandra Johnson's head.
Well, I was standing at the end of the table watching the EVP session, and we had about 7 people there. And at one point I looked down to the camera monitor to check the shot, and I saw these little green lights flying around Sandra's head. And they came out for a few seconds, and then they disappeared, and then they came back. And at first I'm thinking it must be a lens flare or from the lamp in the background or something like that. But when I looked closer, I could see that there were actually 3 lights, and they were all going in different directions, completely independent of each other. That's definitely not characteristic of a lens flare from a single source.
Are these lights evidence of spirit activity, or are they simply a camera malfunction?
I can tell you what it's definitely not. It's definitely not an insect. We would have known if it's an insect. We would have been able to see it if it was that close. And one thing my wife Sandra does not like, and that's insects around her face.
If I had insects flying at my face, into my eyes, I would notice them. I would have noticed that. I have to say I didn't experience anything of a negative nature or even a positive nature. I didn't hear anything. I didn't see anything.
Quite honestly, I saw nothing. When that was going on, I was kind of sitting in the background doing my little observation routine and just kind of feeling it out and watching as they did their EVP session, and there was nothing seen by the naked eye. I think anybody that was in that room could attest to that. I did not see anything. There were no bugs flying around. There were no light glares that were obvious to me.
It may have been a camera glitch. I do not know. I can't explain it. But I know it was not the result of the camera moving, because the camera was basically stationary at the time. And the anomaly wasn't conducive with the way the camera was set, and it seemed to be independent, moving on its own.
As to whether the anomalies are paranormal in nature, I really don't know. It's interesting that we were asking for proof of an entity's presence. Maybe this was this entity's form of communication. It was giving us a visual sign of its presence there, because we didn't wind up recording any EVPs.
Since the capture and validation of evidence is primarily reliant on the environment and methods of which it's collected, effective leadership, knowledge, and cooperation among research team members can be vital in determining an investigation's success.
Wait a minute. Come down here for a second. Loop it through the banister and go straight up. Yeah. Because this way you're just going right through the middle of the banisters.
You got the tape?
Yep. Oh, hold on a second.
A significant understanding of the equipment used and an overall plan for a projected outcome is not only essential to a good investigation, it's the sign of a good investigator.
I guess we could try it out and see what happens. If it doesn't work out, we can always switch it.
Really, I think the biggest thing it takes to be a great investigator, or to be a good investigator, would be honesty. You need to be honest. You need to be able to be honest with the people that you're working with, and you need to be able to be honest with yourself.
I think in order for someone to be a good paranormal investigator, they definitely need to be of sound mind, pretty free of psychiatric trauma or physical trauma as well. You need to be able to get about. But most importantly, I think you need to have a good grasp of all your senses, and I think you need to be level-headed, and I think you need to have the ability to just relax, because a lot of times you're going to go in these places and be there for 10, 12 hours at a time and not find anything. And as long as you have a good attitude and you can be there and just have fun with it, you'll never get disappointed.
The proper setup and positioning of equipment is undeniably a crucial part of almost any scientific investigation. However, knowing exactly where to place the equipment is usually nothing more than an educated guess. To deal with this contingency, investigators typically rely on the client's personal experiences and the recorded history of activity to guide them.
We get there, we interview the homeowner or the family members who are involved to get a feel on what the house is about, what's going on, to sort of have ideas where we should set up our cameras. Because like this one here, we got it's
right, it's facing
taken here.
Right.
Maybe if we can get one like over here and face, the other open area.
Well, right now there's a refrigerator in the corner here.
Okay.
That's what we got now. It's looking down the hallway toward the steps. You can put another camera in this, like the camera's here on the refrigerator top. Put a second camera over here facing down the hallway.
Yes, that's what I mean.
You got it.
Okay.
No problem. Okay. Let's get this. Oh, hold on. Before we position the other one right here. Okay. And then we'll take the wire down. Like I said before, you don't want the wire to be pulling on the camera. The way the camera's just going to tape it down. Back here with a little bit of slack. And then, okay, Peter, we're going to position the camera. Hold on. Is it good?
A little bit to the left and down a little.
Keep twisting it to the right.
Okay.
A little bit more.
Stop. Great.
Okay, our cameras are running.
10th floor. Okay, everyone up. The first team we're going to start at, it's going to be me and Alexis. We're going to be doing the first floor in the basement. Team 2 is going to be JM and Dan. They're going to be doing the second and third floor. About a half hour or into an hour, we're going to switch teams, switch members, so that way everyone always gets to work with each other and everyone gets to go everywhere.
After what can quickly become several hours of equipment